The metallic stench of blood hung heavy in the warehouse air. Not the sharp copper scent of a fresh wound, but the stale, sticky reek of something left to rot. Detective Elise Granger covered her mouth with the inside of her elbow as she stepped beneath the faded DO-Not cross tape. She'd smelled this before. She knew what it meant. Something inside her braced itself. The scene was grotesque. The victim was strapped to a rusted dental chair, limbs splayed like a marionette. A device, some kind of grotesque head cage, had shattered his jaw open. Each tooth had been pulled, catalogued neatly on a steel tray to the left, numbered and organized like forensic evidence. But what chilled Elise most wasn't the physical trauma. It was what had been carved into the man's chest. "You lied. Now learn." "Jesus Christ," murmured Officer Monroe, his voice nearly drowned out by the warehouse's groaning pipes and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. "You get the coroner's time of death?" Elise asked, crouching beside the tray. The victim's eyes were open. Blood had dried at the corners like black tar. She hated when they left the eyes open. "Somewhere around 2 a.m., Monroe said. "Warehouse power kicked back on around 3:15. Electrical logs match up." That's when she saw it, half tucked under the body, wedged beneath the seat, a plastic cassette tape in a clear bag. Labeled neatly in red ink, "Play Me." No USB, no SD card, no fingerprinted smartphone. Old school, intentional. "Get me a tape deck," she said. "Like a Walkman?" "Yes, like a Walkman," she snapped. This guy didn't leave behind Spotify. It took 20 minutes for the CSU team to find an old player in evidence storage. When they returned, Elise popped in the tape. The clicking of the gears echoed in the warehouse as the recording began. "Hello, Richard. Or should I say, Prosecutor Bannett. You spent 15 years convincing juries that the law was black and white. But you knew it wasn't. You bent it, hid evidence, cut deals with monsters. You lied, Richard. And now, you'll learn what truth costs." A pause, a rasping inhale. In front of you is a mirror. Behind that mirror, a needle with an antidote. In your blood is a paralytic that will kill you in 1 hour unless neutralized. But first you must extract all your lies, one tooth at a time. Each lie, each root, each memory. Only then will you be free. The tape ended. No screaming, no pleas, just the cold mechanical instruction of someone who believed they were, what, a moralist? Elise looked back at the tray. 32 teeth. No sign he even tried to grab the antidote, Monroe said softly. "No," Elise whispered. "He did. Look at the cuts on his fingers." "He tried, but he couldn't get through the mirror. It was bulletproof." Monroe swallowed. "You think he was supposed to die?" She stood up and scanned the room. Walls painted in symbols, equations, anatomical sketches, ancient Greek texts scrawled in red ink. There was more here than just sadism. There was a message. "No," Elise said finally. "I think he was supposed to live." 2 hours later, Elise stood under a cold drizzle outside the warehouse as Tex zipped the body bag shut. The killer hadn't just planned a murder. He'd engineered a test, and that made him more dangerous than anything she'd seen before. This wasn't a rage killing. It was a lesson. Back at HQ, Elise poured coffee into a paper cup and stared at the evidence board. There was only one victim so far, if you could even call him that. Richard Bannett, age 58. Widely disliked, promoted after a high-profile gang case where 2 major pieces of evidence had mysteriously vanished. Whispers of corruption had followed him for years. She jotted down a word next to his name on the board. Why? Across the hall, her partner Detective Cam Rios stepped in with a manila folder. "Prelim tox came back," he said. "He was drugged with a synthetic paralytic. Rare compound. You won't find that on the street." "Military grade?" Elise asked. "Possibly. Or someone with a lab background. Or medical." She leaned back, rubbing her temple. "So we're looking for a chemist with an obsession with justice and access to 1990s tape decks. Great." Rios tossed the folder on the table. Also, CSU found something etched under the chair. She flipped through the report and froze. "Ha-001. Finifalter 1 Fiment." If her eyes locked with his. "This isn't over," she said. The next morning, a second body was found. This time, a defense attorney, hung upside down in a public fountain outside the courthouse, lungs filled with pond water. In her hand, clenched tightly, was another cassette tape. The message: "You argued monsters deserve freedom. Now you've drowned in their lies." Another tray, another twisted contraption. This time her fingers had been removed one by one, each labeled with the names of former clients, most of whom had reoffended. Another tally on her chest: Nub 002. It wasn't a one-off. This was a campaign, a sequence. Elise sat alone that night in her apartment, voice recorder in hand. She clicked it on and spoke aloud. Day 1, victim count 2, both legal officials, both accused, if not formally charged, of manipulating justice. The killer is sending a message, one corpse at a time. He uses pain as metaphor. Precision is surgical. He calls himself nothing, but the press will name him soon enough. She paused. There's order in the way he kills, a purpose. These aren't executions, they're blueprints. Each puzzle designed to expose something: false, hypocrisy, cowardice, corruption. We're not chasing a killer, we're chasing an ideology. At 2:47 a.m., her burner rang. A deep voice rasped from the other side. "Detective Granger, I'm glad you're listening." She didn't respond. "You protect the system, but the system is broken. I'll fix it. I'm giving them a choice, just like I'll give you." A dial tone followed. She gripped the phone tighter, heart racing. The game had started, and she had just been invited to play. The room was quiet, too quiet. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the suffocating kind, like the pause between thunderclaps in a storm that refuses to pass. Elise stared at the burner phone. The line was dead, but her heart was still racing. "Glad you're listening." That voice, calm, measured, no slurring, no accent. It wasn't someone hiding. It was someone waiting to be understood. She played it back twice, recorded the call onto her own device, and emailed the file to the Bureau's voice analytics team. But she already knew the truth. This wasn't someone new to this game. This was someone who had planned to be found. 3 days later, the media had a name for him: the Artisan. Not the killer, not the butcher, the Artisan. Because every scene was a grotesque masterpiece. The name stuck. Every major news channel ran the story on repeat, calling it a serial manifesto. 2 legal elites, both publicly shamed, horrifically mutilated, and posthumously accused through tapes and symbols. The public was torn, half horrified, half secretly satisfied. A new email landed in Elise's inbox at 8:11 a.m. It had no subject line. The sender was an encrypted ghost. It contained a single sentence: "How much are you willing to sacrifice to keep a lie alive?" Attached was a .zip file. Inside, video footage from a private security feed. The timestamp: 3 hours in the future. The video showed a man tied to a mechanical chair in a gray-lit basement. He was gagged, panicking, chest heaving. A voice came through the speakers. "Good morning, Samuel. Your life has been built on other people's secrets. You blackmailed the wrong person. Today you'll pay for the lives you helped destroy. But I've given you a choice. The switch before you will sever the fingers you used to sign forged documents. All 10 for freedom. 1 hour. Decide." The camera panned to the wall. Painted in crimson, Nub 003. Elise was already moving before the video ended. The tech team pinged the GPS metadata buried in the file's code. It led to a location, an abandoned records facility on the edge of Greystone County, condemned since the 90s. By the time Elise and Rios arrived with backup, the door had already been rigged to open automatically, triggered by their arrival. No forced entry, no locks. The Artisan wanted them to witness what was inside. The man from the video was dead. 10 fingers on the ground, each crudely severed and lined up like trophies. But there was something new this time, a second tape. Elise took a deep breath and pressed play. "Detective Granger, you're starting to see, aren't you? Not everyone deserves their title. You wear the badge. But what does it mean? If the system can be bought, is it justice or theater? I don't kill to punish. I test. They fail themselves." A pause, that same breath, calm and terrifying. "You asked why I chose Richard. Why Camille? Why Samuel? Here's a better question. Why not you?" Back at the precinct, Elise reviewed everything they had. The artisan knew police protocol. He anticipated response times. He left behind no DNA, no fingerprints, no digital trace beyond what he wanted them to find. She called in an old favor from Quantico, behavioral profiling. "Your guy's not manic," said Agent Karen Liu on the other end. "He's orderly, deliberate, probably has a background in forensics or engineering, maybe both. His victims, each one tied to failed justice. He's not choosing at random. This is his therapy." Elise pinched the bridge of her nose. What's his endgame? Public transformation. He's not just trying to kill people, Elise. He's trying to change the world. 3 days of silence followed. Then another tape, this time delivered in a gift-wrapped box, left on Elise's front porch. Inside, a cassette, a Polaroid photo of Elise as a child, and a single bullet. The tape started with a sound she didn't expect. Her own voice. "This is Detective Elise Granger, case file 08344, missing Thomas Renner." She froze. It was her from 12 years ago. A cold case she never solved. A missing boy age 17. Vanished after testifying against a corrupt foster system. No body ever found. The tape cut to the artisan. "You stopped looking for him, but I didn't. I will find every lie you buried." Haunted by the resurfaced past, Elise drove into the mountains alone. She returned to the last known location of Thomas Renner, a foster cabin in Norview closed for years. Graffiti covered the windows, ashes in the fireplace, broken glass from looters. She paced through the empty hallways, voice recorder in hand. Day 5. "I don't know if Thomas is alive or dead. I thought I did everything I could, but the artisan knows more than I do. I don't think this is about revenge anymore. I think it's about truth. The ugly kind we lie to ourselves about." She found a crumpled notebook under the floorboards. The name T. Renner was etched in the corner. Inside were sketches, crude drawings of traps, of people in cages, of figures with blades for arms and clocks for faces. Some were dated 6 months before the artisan's first kill. Thomas may not have been a victim. He may have been the beginning. But Elise returned to the city with more questions than answers. Her captain wasn't happy. "What? You're chasing ghosts," he snapped. "No," Elise replied. "I'm chasing a story, and every body is a sentence." That night, another victim was found. Not in a warehouse, not in a chamber. In public, live. A judge was placed in a glass tank in the center of the city square. People screamed, cell phones filmed, news choppers circled. He was submerged slowly in water. On the outside, a panel with 2 buttons. One would save him. One would release the footage of his secret affairs, blackmail, and obstruction of justice. Elise raced to the tank with SWAT. The artisan had wired the trap to a heart monitor. Public exposure. Life saved. Silence death. But no one pressed the button. By the time SWAT broke the glass, the judge was gone. Another cassette in a waterproof case floated in the tank. "Some truths are too heavy to bear, so we drown in them." No 004 had more you where the not once art those except in Turing. That night, Elise didn't sleep. She listened to all 4 tapes in a loop. She lined up every victim, every connection, every sin. Then, she saw it. Each victim had crossed paths not just with corruption, but with her cases. She wasn't investigating the artisan. She was being shown something. Hints led to. Each body was a breadcrumb. Each puzzle a dare. In her personal journal, she wrote one sentence. "He's not just targeting corruption, he's targeting my past." She paused, then underlined it twice, and wrote the name, Thomas Renner. Her name was Tara Lind, a journalist for the Detroit Ledger. She reached for the recorder with shaking hands. It clicked on automatically. "Hello, Tara. You wrote lies. You buried truths. You sold your conscience for column inches. You helped destroy a man who was trying to save children. You knew the evidence had been planted, but you ran the headline anyway. You made him a villain because it was easier." A pause, the voice lowered. "But truth doesn't go away. It waits. And now, it waits for you." A click. Then silence. Suddenly, a projector clicked on across the room. It displayed a headline across the far wall. Social worker accused of abuse. More victims expected. Her byline glared back at her like a scarlet letter. Another flash, her email, her editor's reply, her own typed words. It doesn't matter if it holds up in court. We just need a story. Tara fell to her knees. No, I didn't mean. That's when the timer began. Red numbers lit up on the wall. 61 them Sierschen Siedefrodsfime. A speaker crackled. There is a button on the table. If you press it, a file will upload from this room to every major news outlet. A file proving the man you condemned was innocent. But the moment it uploads, so will every email you ever sent, every lie, every bribe, every source you sold out. If you don't press it, the oxygen will run out. Slowly, silently. One lie for each breath. Your truth is your trap, Tara. By the time Elise received the alert, the building was already empty. A 911 call had been placed, digitally rerouted from an old number at the ledger. She and Rios broke into the address listed in the call trace, a defunct tech lab, 3 floors below street level. The air was stale, humid, chemical. They found Tara in the corner, slumped, gasping but alive. The button was pressed. The file had uploaded, and every dirty secret she'd buried was now public record. News exploded. Tara Lind, media liar or manipulated victim. The artisan, hero or horror. But Elise knew better. It wasn't about labels. It was about leverage. The artisan wasn't trying to kill Tara. Not yet. He wanted her alive. Ashamed. Repentant. You said the artisan was escalating, Rios told her in the station's evidence room later that night. But this isn't escalation. It's strategy. He's letting them live now. No, Elise murmured, staring at the timer log they pulled from the scene. He's letting them decide. She pointed to a handwritten note found beside the button. You deserve the life you choose. That phrase rattled Elise's bones. Because it wasn't new. 12 years ago, during the Renner case, she'd found a sticky note in the teens' room. Same handwriting. Same phrase. She never told anyone. She visited the Renner family home again, now foreclosed, boarded up. She let herself in through a back window and found the room untouched, layers of dust on every surface. Thomas's room was filled with books on anatomy, psychology, puzzle design, and obscure philosophers. But it was the box beneath the bed that froze her. Inside, dozens of drawings, traps, blueprints, even a mock journal titled The Game of Worth, and one file folder labeled LG. Inside were news clippings about her, every case she'd worked, every article that mentioned her name, a full psychological profile of her family history. He hadn't just followed her career, he'd studied her. She brought the files back to HQ and locked them in her drawer. Did she tell her captain? No, because now it was personal. Because now she wasn't sure if she was the hunter or the prey. Another message arrived the next morning. Walter, this time carved into a statue outside City Hall. Up 005. And under it, redemption is earned through fire. Who's next to burn? A name showed up in Elise's inbox. A name she hadn't heard in years. Lucas Van. A man acquitted of domestic abuse despite clear evidence. One of Elise's first arrests, botched by the DA's office when the victim recanted after being threatened. Elise had been livid. She'd gone to the press, made noise, but nothing came of it. She'd gone to the press, made noise, but nothing came of it. Now Lucas was missing. Surveillance showed him getting into a black SUV. Voluntarily. No struggle. 12 hours later, a live stream appeared online. Private URL. No trace. Elise was sent the link directly. In it, Lucas was seated in a recliner. His hands rested on metal plates. Hello, Lucas, the artisan began. You left bruises on women and walked away free. So now you'll feel their pain. The choice is yours. Press the plates with enough force to crush the bones in your own hands, or let the timer run out and release a gas that will destroy your lungs the way you destroyed theirs. Elise screamed at the screen. No, don't give him the choice. But it wasn't hers to make. Lucas didn't press. The timer ended. The chair locked. And the artisan whispered, justice denied. Then the feed cut to black. Commodore 2006. Elise threw her coffee across the room. Why now? She barked at the board. Why me? Why him? What's the message? Rio stayed quiet. L'écoute. Then finally said, maybe he's testing you too. She looked up and felt her stomach drop, because that thought had been living in her mind for days. She returned home that night and locked her door twice. She checked every room, every drawer. Nothing. Until she reached her own bedroom mirror and saw it. We don't etched faintly in condensation on the glass. How many people have you let walk free? She didn't sleep. Not that night. Maybe not ever again. It started with a name that meant nothing until it meant everything. Michael Harrow. Elise found it buried in one of the Artisan's encrypted folders. A minor footnote in the foster care corruption case tied to Thomas Renner. Harrow had been a forensic technician, outsourced by the state to catalog evidence during the investigation. Then he vanished. Not fired, not transferred, just disappeared. No forwarding address, no resignation, no obituary. Elise dug deeper. Aaron Grace dug deeper. Walter Waflet defielding. His last known login was used to access sealed crime scene photos. Days after Thomas went missing. A week later, his apartment was cleared out, and the landlord told police Harrow had moved for work, but no employment record existed after that. Walter sov the coming for you forced of the Tulderful. Elise wasn't looking at a victim. She was staring at a ghost. Back in her apartment, Elise pinned Harrow's photo next to Thomas's on her wall. They shared a look. Gaunt features, sunken eyes, pale skin. The kind of faces that saw too much and said too little. She stared for 10 minutes straight, then circled one word beneath them both. Blueprints. The next trap was found in a suburban rental home listed on Airbnb. A maid reported the smell. Inside, a man was strapped to a medical gurney, rigged into an elaborate machine made of surgical tubing, IV drips, and glass containers. Each container bore a name: envy, wrath, gluttony, lust. Each fluid was colored differently, injected slowly into the man's veins. Another cassette waited beside his head. You sold sobriety like a currency. You doctored patient records. You told addicts they were clean so you could keep billing. So now you'll taste every sin you ignored. Each one, a poison. The man convulsed. The labels weren't just metaphors. They were actual substances, sedatives, stimulants, narcotics, pumped in measured doses. There was a key on the table. Walter something in the Paris of though. But to reach it, he would have had to pull out the IVs and bleed to death in the process. He didn't try. Ton 007. Perfouted at 7. Howard her out spraving. The Artisan's message was clear. It wasn't about whether you died. It was about whether you tried. Forensics confirmed what Elise already suspected. The gurney design matched patents filed 10 years ago by Michael Harrow. Unpublished. Unapproved. Medical devices that never made it to market. Each one now repurposed into punishment. She brought Rios into her apartment for the first time. Together they stood before her investigation wall. A spiderweb of photos, red string, headlines, fingerprints, symbols. "This is obsession," he said quietly. "No," Elise replied. "This is preparation." The name Harrow rang a bell in Rios's memory. "Wait, I had a case back in 15, he said. "Guy turned up DOA in a trap like this. Everyone thought it was a cartel hit, but the cuts were surgical. I still have the report." They dug it up. Photos, diagrams, the earliest signs of the Artisan's craftsmanship. The killer didn't emerge out of nowhere. He evolved. And every trap left behind was a page in a book of revenge. That night, Elise received a flash drive, left in her mailbox. No postage, no fingerprints, just a sticker. Genesis. She played it on her laptop. The video was grainy. A dark room. A teenage boy, maybe 17, crying, handcuffed to a radiator. The voice behind the camera was distorted, robotic. "Tell them what they did." "I didn't do anything. Please, I didn't do anything." "Tell them why they buried you." The boy looked at the camera and said one word. Elise. Then the tape cut to black. She dropped the laptop. Her hands shook. She rewound it and played it again. Same voice, same fear, same word. But this time she noticed something else. On the boy's wrist was a hospital band. Thomas Renner. She traced the origin of the video metadata. A rehab center burned down 5 years ago. The same center that handled juvenile psychiatric assessments tied to state custody. One of the last places Thomas Renner was seen. She and Rios went together. The remains were skeletal, half of it condemned, the other boarded shut. Inside the scorched office wing, Elise found a steel cabinet, half melted. Inside, charred patient files. One survived the flames enough to read. Raid est verin fuluk you've kaidiv. Quamalon of the bear and Haxreater side. Renner, Thomas J. Kidney. Diagnosis: complex PTSD. Notable behavior: obsessive-compulsive sketching, early signs of dissociation, hypergraphia. Warning: subject fixates on constructs of punishment. Doctor's note: believes morality is mechanical, claims he must build a machine of truth. She sat down, breathless. He didn't break, she whispered. He became. That night, a final video appeared on the police department's private network. The artisan himself, masked, gloved, standing in shadow. He spoke slowly, clearly. This will be my final set. 10 traps, 10 lessons, each one built from your failures. Detective Granger, you will witness them all. You will not stop me, because you are part of it. The camera panned to a new victim. Still alive, still screaming. Then the feed cut. And beneath the video, one sentence appeared. Cut 008. In progress. Elise barely slept. Her phone never left her hand. The number of active officers on the Artisan case had doubled, but she knew this wasn't going to be solved by brute force or uniform presence. Not when the killer was already 10 moves ahead. And now he had a new victim. Alive. Hiao. Insoltalo. Insolblanc. But where? The breakthrough came at 5:12 a.m. when the Artisan uploaded a new message to a hidden Tor site titled thecarouseltest.net. The homepage was a single embedded video, the feed activated with one click. The camera tilted slowly to reveal a massive circular room. Cement walls, rusted scaffolding, a ceiling fan barely turning. In the middle, a mechanized carousel with 5 people strapped into metal chairs mounted on a slowly rotating platform. Each seat was labeled with a nameplate. Martin, accountant. Trina, DA's office clerk. Brian Foster, father. Kyle, court-appointed therapist. Julia, social worker. All 5 had ties to the Renner case. Some laughed. They were not chosen randomly. A 6th chair, empty, sat with the label scratched off violently. The artisan's voice crackled over a speaker. Welcome to the final circle of responsibility. Each of you helped break a child who needed saving. Some of you covered up abuse. Some ignored it. One of you just looked away. The camera panned to a mounted shotgun above the carousel, then to a pedestal with 2 buttons. A countdown appeared. 15. Phone. In 15 minutes, the carousel will complete 5 full rotations. After each one, the shotgun will fire. Only one of you can be spared. The button to your left disables the weapon once. Use it wisely. Granger, I know you're watching. Choose. Rio stood beside Elise at HQ, watching the live stream on a secure monitor. This is madness, he muttered. He's putting it on us. No, Elise said. He's putting it on me. They scrambled to identify who they could save. Elise pulled up old files, searching for signs of remorse, for any who might have tried to help Renner. The first shot rang out at 13. Brian, the foster father, slumped in his chair. The carousel kept spinning. Screams echoed through the speakers. Elise's fingers hovered over the digital override command. It would only work once. If they used it too early, the rest would die. Too late, and their chance to save anyone would vanish. 12. Albury, Levenal. Albury, Walter Pauturit 1, Irwood Warfrin. Second rotation completed. Trina, the DA clerk, was hit. Elise froze. Trina had doctored paperwork to hide abuse claims. She deserved the scrutiny, but this wasn't justice. This was spectacle. Suddenly, a file auto-downloaded from the Artisan server, titled "They Knew." Inside were audio clips, emails, even court memos, all proof the carousel victims had known about Thomas Renner's abuse and failed to act. One email from Julia read, "He's lying, just another attention-seeking kid trying to tank the placement. Ignore the bruises. He does it to himself." Elise's stomach turned. Horrible. He could use that something Thatcher dance. Shot number 3. Martin, the accountant, fell. The carousel spun slower now, blood trailing across the cement floor. The artisan's voice echoed again. "Tom, who gets to live, detective? The one who pretended to care, or the one who at least admitted they didn't?" Elise looked at Rios. "We stop it now," he urged. "That therapist, Kyle. He tried to report the abuse. His emails got buried." Elise activated the override. "Walter's fine, we wove the Timrit the Vatch played, he Kermalin." Kyle slumped in his chair but unharmed. The shotgun clicked dry. Only Julia remained. And not. The carousel halted at 00. Lights went dark. A spotlight illuminated a second pedestal, this time with a phone. It rang once. Then again. Elise picked it up. "You chose. Did it feel like justice?" the artisan whispered. "You wanted me to save him," she snapped. "Why?" "Because remorse isn't redemption. And now you've seen what it costs. Where's Julia?" A pause. "Still breathing, for now, but every breath she takes is one I had to earn. Just like you." Click. SWAT stormed the building 20 minutes later, an abandoned civic auditorium on the edge of the city. Julia was alive, unconscious but stable. Kyle, sobbing, had urinated himself. Trina, Martin, and Brian were already dead, and painted in huge letters on the back wall. "Her carousel spins next." Back at HQ, Elise collapsed onto the couch in the break room. She didn't speak for 10 minutes. Just stared at the ceiling. Rios sat beside her. He didn't try to offer comfort. Then Elise whispered, "He's not just testing them anymore. He's training me." At 2:19 a.m. she woke from a nightmare. Her apartment windows were fogged. She approached slowly, heart racing. On the glass, the same message from nights ago had reappeared, but this time with an addition. "How many people have you let walk free?" And under it, in smeared black marker, "Your carousel begins with 001. Her name was Mara Sloan. The girl Elise had failed to protect during her first year as a detective. She testified against her attacker, a police officer. Her case collapsed in court. 2 weeks later, she died by suicide. Elise hadn't said her name aloud in 10 years. But now, she whispered it like a prayer. Mara. The next body was already cold when they found it, laid out across the marble floor of a high-end law office like a dissected cadaver. The victim, Caleb Hart, corporate defense attorney. Time of death, 7:02 a.m. Cause, unknown. What wasn't unknown was the method. Caleb's chest had been surgically opened, ribs spread with retractors, organs exposed but untouched. His skin was etched with a map, literally. Anatomical diagrams inked in medical-grade tattoo dye across his entire body. The lungs labeled lies, the liver, guilt, the heart, truth. On the wall above him, words spelled in his own blood. The body remembers what the mind hides. And beside the corpse, another cassette tape. Back in the evidence room, Elise inserted the tape. "Caleb, you defended monsters, you buried reports, you silenced victims in exchange for stock options. But your body knows. It always knew. I have preserved it, so your lies can no longer be buried. Your sins are now anatomical. Every organ tells the truth, and every truth bleeds." The tape stopped. No sound but the ticking of the wall clock. He wasn't just killing him, Elise muttered. He was turning him into a message board. Like a body as confession, Rios added. A post-mortem testimony, and a warning. Caleb Hart had defended over 50 high-profile clients accused of sexual assault, child endangerment, even manslaughter. His nickname in the legal world was the Scalpel. Clean, cold, effective, untouchable. Until now, the artisan had turned his title literal. Elise stared at the crime scene photos. The tattoos formed something more than a diagram. They outlined a blueprint, not of a human body, but of a building, a floor plan. She sent it to GIS specialists, who ran it against public infrastructure databases. It matched an abandoned medical campus on the outskirts of the city, shut down after a scandal involving illegal experimentation on minors. She grabbed her coat and went alone. The facility was 3 stories of rot and rust. IV poles still hung in the hallways. Charts littered the ground like confetti from a forgotten disaster. Elise followed the body map down corridors, past decaying operating rooms, until she reached a door labeled C6, Children's Wing. Inside, the walls were covered in hundreds of Polaroids. Each one showed a different trap. Some completed, some half-built, some designed specifically for her. At the center of the room, a child's toy chest, repurposed into a steel container, locked. A note on top. Redemption is not given, it is extracted. She didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, she scanned the photos for something familiar. One image stopped her heart. Mara Sloan, the girl she'd failed to protect, bound in a mock-up trap, a precursor to the carousel design. It wasn't real, but it was detailed. Labeled, Prototype 001, Pain of Innocence. That night, Elise returned home with the image of Mara in her hand. She poured a glass of whiskey, sat at the kitchen table and stared at the picture. She remembered the night Mara had testified. How brave she'd been, how Elise had promised her that everything will be okay. It wasn't. The artisan hadn't forgotten, and neither had Elise. Walter Patuavald bid would have toured a cafe. The next morning, her apartment had been broken into. Nothing was stolen. But her bedroom mirror had been replaced with a surgical mirror like those found in operating rooms. Etched along the edges in delicate, almost elegant handwriting. Your turn, Dr. Granger. Time to dissect the truth. Meanwhile, another victim was found. Felix Dalton, a former prison warden. He'd overseen the Renner Youth Facility, the facility where Thomas had spent his final months in state custody. Dalton had claimed Renner escaped before he could be transferred. Now he was found in his own basement, draped in prison orange, trapped in a cage filled with intravenous drips, each one a different neurotoxin slowly degrading his motor function. A tape was left on a loop. Rosa, you caged a boy who needed help. You called him broken, so now I'll break you, neuron by neuron. Dalton had scratched words into the concrete floor with his fingernails. He remembered. And next to it, Nide 009, Quankalbarawi Taima. They've what question longs of thirid fertio. Elise studied the body count. 9. Each trap more symbolic, more cruel, more surgical. It wasn't rage anymore. It was ritual. She returned to the toy chest in the abandoned hospital and broke the lock. Inside, a black leather journal. It wasn't the artisan's. It was Thomas Renner's. Each entry was dated, sketched, annotated. He wrote like a scientist, not a killer, as if each trap was an equation. One entry read, I was put in a system that mistook silence for safety. Pain became my education. The body never forgets. Another, Granger meant well, but the system swallowed her. I must become something it cannot ignore, a surgeon of truth. Then, near the end of the journal, a haunting line. If I cannot heal the wound, I will amputate the disease. She held the book against her chest and whispered, What did they do to you, Thomas? Later that evening, Elise pulled every unsolved juvenile death in the state from the last 15 years. Patterns emerged. Boys like Thomas, girls like Mara. All failures of the system, all ignored. She circled 15 names, then crossed off 9. She was the last name on the list. She'd failed to stop them. Now she was next. Not as a victim, but as a final test. The artisan struck again. Only this time he didn't leave a corpse. He left a bomb. The location, a courthouse bathroom stall, 3rd floor. The victim, Judge Alan Prescott, known for handing out lenient sentences in exchange for campaign donations, concealed through shell law firms and trust arrangements. Prescott had once dismissed charges against a known abuser with a smirk and a shrug. Elise had watched that trial from the gallery years ago, helpless, furious. Now, the judge was center stage. When bomb squad arrived, they found him handcuffed inside a plexiglass box, surrounded by clear canisters of fluid. Tubing connected the canisters to the ventilation shaft. The bomb was live. Time to detonation. 45. Elise arrived just before the countdown hit 43. Inside the box was a recording device playing on a loop. Judge Prescott, you have ruled from a pulpit of decay. You called it law, but law must be blind, not bought. You sold your sentences. You condemned the innocent. Now I condemn you to a choice. Before you is a gavel. One strike activates the pressure lock, sealing the vents and saving your life. But that same strike will destroy all sealed court records of your bribery and corruption. Your legacy or your life, which will the world remember? Rios scanned the schematics. The gavel's connected to a dead man's switch. If he doesn't make a choice, he dies. But if he seals the vents, the system routes a wipe command to every cloud database tied to his corruption case. It's a legal suicide, Elise murmured. No, Rios said. It's an execution with paperwork. Inside the box, Prescott was panicking, sweating, blood on his knuckles from punching the glass. They activated the intercom. Judge, listen to me, Elise said. There's a way out. But we need to disable the vent system remotely. You don't have to make his choice. But the judge wasn't listening. He stared at the gavel in front of him. Then slowly, he spoke into the intercom mic. If I go down, I'm not going alone. He struck the gavel. Once, hard. The vents hissed. The lights dimmed. The system powered down. Inside the box, the judge collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. The gas was neutralized. But across the cloud, a wave of deletions began. Gigabytes of data gone. Financial records, whistleblower statements, internal court emails. Wiped. Just like that. He chose himself, Elise whispered. He saved his life and destroyed the evidence. Rios didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Later that night, Elise received a USB drive left in her mailbox. No note. Just a single audio file. She played it. The artisan's voice, low and level. He chose the gavel. Now ask yourself, detective, what would you choose? A truth that damns you, or a lie that saves others? Tick-tock. She sat in silence for 10 minutes before opening her laptop. She typed a search query she had buried for years. Lawsuit, Granger, Elise, Internal Affairs. There it was. A sealed case. One she'd buried. Mara Sloane's file. Turns out, Elise had made a mistake. She hadn't just failed to protect Mara. She had signed off on a psychological assessment, one that ruled the officer mentally unfit for trial. He walked because of her signature, not because of the system, because of her. Her hands trembled. She didn't cry. She just whispered, I'm part of this. The next morning, the artisan sent a message to the media. The first time he spoke publicly. A pre-recorded video uploaded to every major news outlet's inbox at 6 a.m. He stood in front of a wall of clocks. Behind him, photos of every victim. On his face, a mask made of fractured mirror pieces. We all wear masks. Some are badges, some are gavels, some are signatures. But masks break, and when they do, we see what's underneath. I am not the villain. I am the reflection. 10 lies, 10 truths, 10 tests. 8 complete, 2 remain. The next one is you, Detective Granger. The video cut. Elise's captain pulled her into his office. Why the hell is he talking about you now? We can't have you in the field. You're compromised. Elise didn't argue. She handed over her badge. I need to stop him. I need to finish what I started. He didn't stop her. He knew she was right. Later that day, Elise sat in her apartment. On her table, a single bullet, the one that came in the original tape box, etched on the side in tiny, careful script. Truth has a cost. She placed it in her palm and closed her fist. The bullet had her name on it. Walter, not literally, but Elise could feel it. Heavy, cold, inevitable. She placed it on the coffee table, next to her badge and a torn photograph, one she hadn't looked at in years. Her academy graduation. She was smiling. Next to her, a young man with dark eyes and a lean frame. Ethan Cale. Her first informant, a former juvenile offender. Sharp, quiet, dangerous in a thoughtful way. She hadn't seen him in almost a decade, but until today, because Ethan's name had just appeared on the Artisan's server logs. He wasn't a target. He was logged in. She called in every favor she had left. Within hours she had a trace, an IP ping from a warehouse on the edge of Ferndale. Surveillance footage from the adjacent bank confirmed it. Ethan was there. At 3:22 a.m., the same time the Artisan's last message was broadcast to the media. She went alone. The warehouse looked abandoned, overgrown with ivy, rust devouring its doors. She entered through a side hatch. Inside, darkness. Then light. A single hanging bulb illuminated the center of the room. There, seated calmly on a wooden crate, was Ethan Cale. He didn't run. Didn't flinch. He smiled. It took you long enough. He looked older, beard stubbled, hair cropped tight, body lean and wiry like a coil. His eyes, though, hadn't changed. Still sharp. Still too observant. Elise didn't speak. Ethan did. He said you'd come, said you'd need answers, and I'd give them to you. Said you deserved the truth more than anyone. You're working with him. No, Ethan said. I'm learning from him. Elise stepped forward, careful, calculating. You think this is about truth. It is truth, stripped bare. For once the system's finally honest. You think cages and bombs and scalpels are honesty. Ethan tilted his head. Tell me, detective, how many monsters did you let walk because the evidence got lost? How many kids did you lose because the court ordered a return to the abuser's home? You call that justice? He stood, slow and deliberate. We build a machine from broken parts. That's what he taught me. We take pain and we forge a structure. Something that doesn't lie, something that earns truth. Where is he? Elise snapped. Am I surreal? Am I surreal? Ethan smiled. He's always been here, in the case files, in the reports, in the footnotes. You read him, you just didn't see him. He walked toward her. You think this is about revenge. It's not. It's about evolution. You weren't chosen to stop him. You were chosen to replace him. Elise pulled her sidearm. Don't. Ethan didn't stop. I watched you back then. You were fire, but the job drowned you. You let Mara die. You signed the dismissal. You could have burned it all down, but you didn't. And now someone has to. His words stung deeper than any knife. Because they were true. There's one more test, Ethan said. It's not for me. It's not for him. It's for you. He dropped something onto the floor between them. A photo. Thomas Renner. Alive. Bound. Bruised. Eyes wide with panic. The timestamp? 3 days ago. Elise froze. He's alive? Barely, Ethan said. But if you want him, you'll have to see the full machine. He stepped back into the dark. Well, tomorrow, 9 p.m. Central Station, lower level, come alone. He vanished. Elise didn't follow. She spent the next day combing through everything. Old cases. Every scrap from the Renner file. Every trap. Every tape. Patterns emerged. Not just moral connections. Design motifs. Each trap followed a system. The lungs. The heart. The brain. Walter's tuft of some. The brain Felstrich shows in Cho. The nerves. The artisan wasn't just building messages. He was building a body. An anatomy of sin. Rios called. I know where the last one is. Where? The old transit tunnels under Central Station, closed since the city went electric. The place is a labyrinth. I'm going, Elise said. Not alone. Yes, alone. At 8:56 p.m. she stepped into the tunnels. The entrance was already unlocked. Inside, A single rail car waited. Its doors opened as she approached. She stepped inside. The lights flickered. Then the screen at the front of the car turned on. The artisan's voice filled the space. "You've made it, Elise. You've walked the path. Now walk through the last door." The car jolted forward. Slow. No creaking. A countdown ticked on the screen. 35 €. At the end of the ride, the car hissed to a stop in front of a massive steel chamber. On the door, a glass panel. Inside the chamber, Thomas Renner. Bound. No mouth duct taped. Eyes wild with fear. Beside him, 2 levers. Above, 2 signs. Forgive. Condemned. A speaker crackled. "He became what I am. He became what you should have. But now, you choose. If you pull forgive, he walks free. No jail. No trial. You sign the blank check. But if you pull condemn, he dies, and you get your justice. One truth, one death, one choice." Tick, tock. Elise froze. This wasn't about stopping a killer. This was about becoming one. She looked at Thomas. He nodded slowly, deliberately, as if to say, "Do it." As if to say, "I'm ready." She stepped to the levers, one left hand hovering, breath sharp, and whispered, "No." She pulled neither. Instead, she raised her gun and shot the panel. The glass shattered. Sparks flew. The chamber door unlocked. She rushed inside, cut the restraints. Thomas collapsed into her arms. Alive. What? Barely breathing. "It's over," she said. "No," he whispered. "He's still out there." Then came the final recording, played over the tunnel speakers. The artisan's voice, soft and amused. "Very good, detective. You passed the test. You didn't pull the lever. You made your own path. That means the machine is yours now. Do with it what you will." The aftermath was a blur of steel doors, medical transports, press blackouts, and whispered orders. Thomas Renner was alive, but barely. Elise stayed beside him in the hospital, watching as doctors cleaned the blood from his wrists, cataloged the scars, and debated whether he was a victim or an architect. He hadn't spoken since that final whisper in the tunnels. "He's still out there." Rios arrived on the 3rd day. He placed a folder on Elise's lap. "2 more traps have surfaced," he said. "Old ones. Years old. Never linked until now. One was found in a condemned apartment complex, walls lined with mirrors, a recording that repeated, 'What you reflect is what you become.' The second was in an industrial elevator shaft. 3 men had died inside. Only one body was recovered intact. Their names had been in Renner's journal. "These aren't just cold cases," Elise said. "They're trial runs." "Blueprints," Rios added. "No," Elise corrected. "They're diagrams of something bigger." She looked up at the evidence board, photos, strings, victims. She began to repin everything, not in chronological order, not by role, but by system. The heart, the lungs, the brain, the gut, the skin. Each victim wasn't just symbolic. They were organs in a greater construct. He wasn't killing random people. He was building a body of guilt, of corruption, of justice, of pain. She called in a forensic sketch artist. They worked for 6 hours. At the end of it, they had recreated the layout of the artisan's kills. It was an anatomical diagram mapped over the city grid. Every trap had been positioned to form the outline of a human body. Central station, the heart, the courthouse, the brain, while the rehab center, the liver, and one place remained unmarked. The hand. She traced the map to its end. A now-defunct surgical training center called Blackridge Hall, purchased in secret by a shell company 6 years prior. It was in the shape of a handprint from the aerial view. She stared at it and whispered, "Final incision." At 3:33 a.m. she stood outside the iron gates. Alone. A storm cracked overhead. She entered. Inside, the facility was quiet. No booby traps. No tripwires. Just silence. Until she reached the main surgical theater. There, waiting beneath an operating lamp, was Michael Harrow. Alive. Older. Paler. Eyes sunken like ghost-lit wells. He stood beside a steel table, covered in surgical tools. "I was wondering when you'd come." Elise didn't raise her weapon. "Not yet."
Yeah.
"Thomas is alive." "I know." "Ethan's in custody." "Of course he is." He gestured to the table. "But this was never about them. It was about you. You wanted me here." "No," he said. "You needed to be here." He stepped back. "The system eats the innocent and feeds the guilty. I was inside it. I breathed it. And then I met Thomas. He wasn't broken. He was pure rage, pure focus, and I saw what he needed. A scalpel, a guide. You turned him into this." "No," Harrow said softly. "I sharpened what was already there." He opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Inside, Elise's personnel records, handwritten notes, internal affairs complaints, disciplinary warnings, missed deadlines, emotional instability after Mara's death. "You could have been the artisan," Harrow said. "You had the pain, the grief, the brilliance, but you chose the badge instead of the blade. Because I wanted to fix it. And you failed, over and over." "That's not justice," she snapped. "No, but it's honesty." He walked to the wall and flipped a switch. Screens lit up. Every trap, every victim, every test. The full machine. A diagram. A doctrine. A legacy. "I'm dying," he said. "Pancreatic. Stage 4. "Good," Elise said flatly. "So this is my last gift. You've seen the system. You've seen what it does. You can take the machine, or you can let it die with me." He walked to her, held out a cassette tape. "This is your blueprint now. One more test. One more lie. You decide if the machine ends or evolves." Elise stared at the tape, then at Harrow. "There's one difference between us," she said. "What's that?" She stepped back, raised her gun. "You see blood as currency. I see it as a cost," and pulled the trigger. Michael Harrow collapsed in a heap. One shot. Center mass. No last words. Just a final breath. Walter Suthington. The monitors behind him flickered and went dark. Elise left the tape behind. She never listened to it. She burned it that night. Along with every file, every blueprint, every piece of the machine. Except one. She returned to Thomas in the hospital. He looked at her, weakened, ashamed. "It's over?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "It has to be." 4 weeks passed. Walter Price passive the torn. 4 weeks off his enough time. The city returned to normal on the surface. But it was a different kind of normal now. One where truth was no longer assumed. One where lies had consequences. Where fear didn't come from a killer hiding in the shadows, but from the knowledge that he had lived in the light all along. Thomas Renner was transferred to a secured mental health facility under federal custody. He still barely spoke. No lawyers, no appeals. Only one statement, written in his own hand. "I didn't kill the system. I just showed it the mirror." The artisan case closed with 12 bodies. 3 survivors. 2 known accomplices. And one truth that no one wanted to say aloud. The system was broken before the first trap was ever set. Elise Granger returned to work, but she didn't reclaim her badge. She took a different job, one with no headlines, no courtroom photos, no podiums. She joined internal investigations. Her new title? Integrity Analyst. Her job, to audit the very machine she once defended. Some called her a watchdog. Others called her a traitor. She didn't care. She had learned something from the artisan. Justice didn't need to be loud. It needed to be accurate. But she kept one item from the case, the glass mirror once left in her bedroom. She mounted it on her wall. Every morning she looked into it and asked herself the same question. If the cost of the truth is your comfort, would you still want it? And every day she tried to answer with action. But there was still one more test. A case file arrived in her inbox anonymously. It wasn't labeled. No cover sheet. Just photos, notes, diagrams. A new victim. A new victim. He had a city official. Still alive. Still hiding corruption. At the bottom of the file, a line of text in familiar sharp handwriting. One test remains. The machine waits for your hands. She closed the file. Deleted it. Then paused. And pressed undo. She drove to the listed address. Sat in her car for 20 minutes. The temptation screamed louder than any tape recorder ever had. She could stop it. She could fix what the system wouldn't. No red tape. No mistrails. Just truth. Delivered cleanly, quietly. Her phone buzzed. A man where the pricing's 3 times. Vilken hatchet in the audio within the worse. Softly new but you'd Remo. A message from Rios. Dinner tonight? Or are you still talking to ghosts? She stared at the screen. Will gate, then back at the door. She got out. Walked up to the porch. And knocked. Not with a weapon. Not with a trap. Just her badge. The last piece of it she'd kept. The man inside opened the door. Sweating. Worried. Guilty. He expected a monster. He got a mirror. Mr. Latimer, she said, we need to talk about what you've done. You're not a cop anymore, he muttered. She nodded. That's why this won't end with a bullet. Inside, she placed a recorder on the table. Pressed record. I'm going to give you a choice. And just like that, the machine continued. Not with blades. Not with cages. But with accountability. A quieter cruelty. A more powerful truth. One trap at a time. No blood. No timer. No theatrics. Just truth. Sharp as ever. Because sometimes, the most terrifying machine is the one that looks like justice. And runs on people like her. 2 years later. A symposium in D.C. Topic: Justice, Trauma, and the Failures of the Legal System. Panelists included decorated officers, civil rights attorneys, and reform advocates. Among them sat Elise Granger. Her hair was shorter now, her voice more measured. Her eyes older, not from age but from endurance. She didn't bring slides. She didn't bring statistics. Just a small mirror. She placed it on the table in front of her. The room went quiet. They called him a monster, she began. The media, the department, even me at first. But he wasn't a monster. He was a reflection of a system that rewards silence, of a culture that punishes truth, and of people like me who waited too long to choose a side. A journalist raised a hand. Are you saying you agree with what he did? Elise looked at the mirror. Then up. I'm saying he was a result, not a cause. The tape played next. One never released to the public. Thomas Renner's voice, recorded before his final transfer to federal custody. I don't hate the people who hurt me. I hate the silence that let them keep doing it. I became noise, that's all. The artisan was never charged. Because technically he didn't exist. Michael Harrow died with no confession. Thomas Renner refused to speak against him. And Ethan Cale disappeared during a prisoner transfer. No one stopped the machine. It simply paused. Waiting. In her new role, Elise launched the Gray Protocol, an internal review initiative that allowed anonymous reports of judicial misconduct, systemic bias, and law enforcement failure. Investigated outside the chain of command. It was mocked at first, then feared, then replicated nationwide. A small price, she thought. For what it had cost to learn, what it had cost to survive. She kept the mirror on her desk. Walter's Ficking mirror on her desk. Whenever a case file arrived that made her question everything, she would look into it. And remember, truth isn't a scalpel. It's the scar that remains when one is used.